I know, we're both like.
All right. Can somebody hit that door? Just not. I don't know. That'll make a big difference. Hey Dan, can you? Hang on. It's like a clown car. They just keep coming in. We're good.
It just works harder than it has.
All right, guys.
Appreciate you getting change.
Wait, are we on? Oh, we're on? Yeah. All right, hey everybody, listen up. Listen up, welcome. So today is the official start of the Trollers Unlimited year. We've got a pretty decent crowd here in person. Hopefully some people online. This is year number, for those of you not familiar, this is the 53rd year of the club, started in 1967. We operate from March 1st to March 1st is our official year, so even though we had a meeting last month, that was actually the end of last year. So with that, because we are in a new year, your dues are now due. I sent out a private email because this is being broadcast publicly. I'm not going to do any financial or money stuff. I sent out in the email the rate. If you paid last year, it's a discounted rate. New members come in at the same rate as the prior members were paying. So it'll even everybody out by the end of the year. If you have any questions about the amount of money, if you can't remember if you paid last year, shoot me a text, an email. I'll let you know what you owe for 2021.
So what is it for new members?
New members is $40. If you paid last year, it was $20. Just a couple of people left that did not pay last year. They have to pay $60. So by the end of this calendar year, everyone will have paid like an equal amount of money. Okay, so you can either send checks to me. You can pay me tonight for you guys here live, or the Zelle is up and running. I think they only take Zelle, and that's like now that's my preferred payment. Is if you can shoot me a Zelle. It's instantaneous. I've got an electronic record of it immediately. I don't have to write a receipt down or anything like that. So that is actually preferred if you can do it. If not, no problem. Mail me a check or see me tonight before I leave. And if you have any questions, again, text, email, whatever, to me. Similar, that brings me to the Treasurer's Report. Again, because we're broadcasting this on the internet, I'm not going to go through the finances. We're good on money. To the ongoing members, I sent out the balance as of the date I sent the meeting notice, and I've had several people renew, and at least 2 new members joined since then. One of the new members who was texting and not paying attention. Okay, so one of the new members is here tonight. This is Ray Larson. Ray has a boat called Mom Said Yes. Trailers, he buys a Waukegan ramp pass. He's got one of those big honking Lunds like Bill DeYoung has, one of those big giant Baron Magnum, whatever they are, out of Waukegan. We're not going to give him the official TU welcome tonight. We'll save that for when we have some more people in person. And when it's not public, we've got a couple of youngins here, and they don't need to hear the language and the cheer. So.
Yeah, we also have another new member.
Oh, we have a second new member.
Joe,
Joe, give me your name.
Jin.
Joe Jin.
Yep.
You are also Waukegan, correct?
I'm also Waukegan.
Got it. And I know 26-foot Starcraft. What's the name? Or excuse me.
Cialis.
It's 26-foot Sportcraft, right?
Yes.
Sportcraft. Cialis is the name of your boat? Seriously?
C.Alice, yeah.
Cialis. Oh, like C, like S-E-A-C, Alice?
No, like Piaget was saying
Oh.
somebody else.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Similar to
I hear you don't get as much.
So similar to Ray, we'll give you the official TU welcome sometime when we're not broadcasting over the internet. Okay. Fishing reports. We had quite an interesting start to fishing reports this year. So we had a couple of reports out of Indiana this past weekend. So thanks to Jerry Flaherty for kicking off the first report of the official TU year. Remember to submit your reports. You type into the address everyone@trollersunlimited.com. All the members get every report. Try to report every single trip, good or bad or otherwise. It's important. Bad information about what is bad is just as good as what is good. So if I know that I'm coming out of Waukegan, if I know that somebody stank going to the south, maybe I'll try to go north. You know, so that's just as good as good trips too. So everybody start reporting as the boats go in. Waukegan Harbor opened Monday for business, and the launch ramps in Indiana are open. The launch ramps I know at Waukegan are open. I don't know when Chicago opens, but as soon as you guys start fishing, start reporting. It'll help everybody. All right. Yes, sir.
I can comment on that. Scott Stevenson had a meeting last week, and he said barring any extremely unforeseen circumstances, the harbors will open on May 1st.
Okay, so if anyone didn't hear that, unless there's extremely odd circumstances, some kind of, the Chicago harbor should open May 1st? May 1st. Okay, sounds good. Hopefully it'll happen. Brings us to the Chicago switch outing. It's set. June 13 is the switch. I'll start sending out emails to the Chicago captains about getting the dates, or getting boats set, and then we'll start figuring out crew. I expect Dan Downs will put together the captains and the crew like he usually does, but I have not spoken to him about it yet, so we'll see. All right, before two more things before I turn it over to Captain Jerry Costible.
Costible.
God damn it, I always get it wrong. Jerry Costible. He's going to promote his own pro staff, but real quick for mine, I've got Warrior sent me their new colors. They've got like 6 new colors for this year. I've got them at the table over here. If you want to see the new Warrior colors for 2021, come over and I can show them to you. The other thing is that they had not updated the website in, I think, more than 2 years. He updated all the colors now, and he actually eliminated some of the ones. We were test boat for a lot of colors. The good colors made it on, so you've seen in reports, and people have asked me, what does Jamaican Sunrise look like? Because it was last year, it was a red hot lure last year. Jamaican Sunrise is on the site now. Super Jordo was one that was fantastic for the higher, shorter leads especially, slide divers also. And people don't know what it was, and it wasn't on the website. Super Jordo's on there now. So he added the good colors. There were some test colors that didn't work very well, and it must not work for the other boats either because those didn't make it into the lineup. So if you go to the website, it's been all updated, and except for 6 new colors that are coming out, and I've got the 6 colors over here. And next month, we have a speaker booked. Next month, the meeting is on April 1st, so don't miss it. You know, the first Thursday of the month. When it falls on the 5th, 6th, 7th, we get a pretty good turnout. But when it's on April 1st, I always get a lot of emails the next day saying, hey, dude, I missed it because I think it was still last month. So next month, it's on April 1st. We've got Tony Kreitz from Sharky Tackle and Spoons coming. Thank you to Dan Wheeler for setting that up. Dan is a pro staff for them, and he was able to get them to come. And so it should be a good presentation. So next month, Tony Kreitz, it's on April 1st. And let's see, any questions, announcements, or new business from anybody here? Anyone?
I saw online they're having this Saturday, I sent out a link for a virtual fishing, I don't know, expo. So it starts at like 9 o'clock, goes to like 6 o'clock, has all sorts of speakers and random people selling things. So.
And that's on, I believe that's on the Fish Hawk Electronics Facebook page, is that right? So it's that's on the Fish Hawk Electronics Facebook page, and it's an all-day like online seminar thing. So that should be good. Jim, did you? Oh, I thought you had your. Oh, you were ordering a beer. Okay, good. I'm going to be right behind you. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Captain Jerry. He represents a lot of different companies, so I'm going to let you introduce himself. I think we all know Jerry. He's spoken to us before. He's come down from Wisconsin, kind enough to speak to us. So with that, Jerry, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. First and foremost, I'm hoping everybody is stayed healthy, the best you can. Keep doing what you're doing. We've got a pretty exciting spring coming up, I think. I think we're going to see a lot of good fishing. I know a lot of people are excited. I'm excited. I've been in over 40 years. I've been in the charter business from the time I was a young kid as a first mate to the captain life, and left it and came back. And I don't think I've ever been this fired up for spring. It's just been, I think, all of last year, and at the end of our season last year, I was ready for my fall to get here and start hunting. This spring, I am really, really excited to get the boat in the water. There's no, as of right now, we don't have any question marks on when we can go in and if we can go in and all of that stuff. So we were a lot luckier than you guys. We got to start Memorial Weekend last year was the start of our season. So At least we didn't lose the whole month of May. We got that last busy weekend. I'm coming down here tonight talking on something that I get a lot of questions when I'm doing seminars, when I'm speaking at clubs. No matter what I talk about as far as presentations and you know, how do you catch kings, how do you catch this, how do you catch that, I get a lot of questions about weighted lines. And as you know, when Scott contacted me and asked me to come down, I said, you know, these guys got a lot of experience. What is one of the things that I get asked a lot that these guys can get from you know, some of my experience? And weighted lines kept coming back, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. We've seen weighted lines make a come to where all of a sudden everybody was using lead core. Now I'm going back to the 80s, showing my age a little bit. When lead core started really getting popular out here, you know, it was not uncommon when you were running lead core to run 3 lines, and that was it, because you couldn't turn with nothing else, because you were running 10 colors, and that's all you were running. We didn't learn yet how to catch fish at different levels with shorter lead core. So we were running all 10 colors out, and turns kind of brought us about 1.5 miles, and then brought us back. So we had about 7 miles on the boat by the time we got back to and caught fish. But it was a fish catcher. There was no doubt that when summertime came and those cool spring temps started to warm up in the upper part of the water column, those lead cores were catching all of our fish. At that time we were running 6, you know, we had 6, 7 downriggers in the back. We had them all over the place. It's a whole different day today. We all know that. There's a whole lot of different products out there. Guys have gotten very, very, very experimental with their weighted lines. So, you know, I'm going to talk about everything from wire divers, which I considered a weighted line, all the way to the new weighted steel that's out there from Torpedo. So we're going to kind of go in through that. Termination, we'll talk about. I always get asked questions about, you know, what boards do they use with what lengths and stuff like that. So you guys got questions, just pop it up. Don't try to hold it till the end. I know my bladder can't do that no more, so let's get on with it. Wire divers, I can tell you for me, when that summertime temperature, when the springtime cold water starts to warm up, and my Power Pro divers are still in my program, and they're my high divers, and then I drop down a wire diver below them. Last year was the first time in a long time outside of tournaments that I ran 4 wire divers every single day. They were that good. I had them dialed in to where I was fishing. If I was out in 150 feet of water, I had a wire diver that was down, in my mind, with all my knowledge, about 100 to 110 feet. It became those 2 divers that were down real deep. They were nonstop. They were my best fish catchers throughout the trips. He's got a question here. Wire comes in a lot of different forms. And one thing through a lot of trial and tribulation with wire, if you ever run wire divers, you know there's a lot that you learn the hard way with. I've seen single strand wire, guys running just 1 strand of wire, very thick. I've seen a 7 strand, I've seen a 10 strand, I've seen a 19 strand. And I've learned, you know, I'm one where when something comes out and I hear somebody's catching fish on it, I've got to try it. I've got to see if it is what it is. And I did that with wire last year. There's a couple real good points on the wire, the single strand. You know, you got a good, better, best. The more strands you have, the better your whole experience with wire is going to be. And hopefully I can clear some of that up. You know, a good wire setup, you know, a single strand, you have no gaps where you've got, you know, multiple strands of wire building your single strand that you fish with. You got 1 strand, you got no resistance. When you start getting multiple strands, you got resistance of that water getting inside that wire. I don't know, is anybody in here running any single strand wire? That was the big thing when it first started happening, and actually the guys on the other side of the lake really developed all of that. I don't see too much single strand anymore. Let's go into like a 7-strand, which is the single strand was a good presentation. Now you get into your 7-strand or your 8-strand, 9-strand is getting better. You still have, and I wish I had a way to draw circles and show you what I'm talking about. You have multiple strands in there. So when you get a 7-strand, you got a little more drag because that water can go into those gaps and fill that. It also, it kinks easy. It's less than a single strand, but it still kinks very shortly. One thing I did watch, I watched an experiment done with wire line on the strength of a wire that gets kinked and how much the breaking tension was. Blew my mind on how weak wire gets with just a little kink. I was one of the guys where I'm letting it out. All right, I got 180, 190, 210. Oh no, there's a kink. I'm not going to cut that off and start all over. I don't have that time on a 5-hour trip to do that. So I try to do my best to smooth it out and then just send it down and then hold my breath. I can tell you I probably have 100 Dipsy diver sets that are laying on the bottom of that lake because I didn't fix a strand. It could have been just from bouncing on the back of the boat on my way in. It could have been from setting a line, seeing that rod get smoked, and it comes back broke. Those kinks are kinks, and they are very weak. And when I say weak, when they were doing the breaking strength, a lot of them were breaking at, from 11 to 17, 19 pounds was it. That's all that kink could hold. So it really made a difference in that strength. Let's see. Water fleas. Let's talk a little bit about water fleas. Multiple strand wire. I know up by us when they show up. Last year they showed up and they were. I mean, it was unbelievable how many we had on our lines. My wire divers were. I was running 7-strand to start, and they were picking up a lot of the water fleas, the spiny water fleas. So as my customers are reeling, I'm up there just trying to strip all that off of there so they can make some ground. When I switched over to the 19-strand, I noticed I wasn't getting as much, and it'll make sense in a minute if you don't already know that. Let's see. The resistance, and that's again, the more strands you have, less resistance in the water. The 7-strand is what started it all. That's what we all ran. I still got spools like this full of wire line, 7-strand wire line. But the resistance, I noticed a difference in going to the 19-strand was my high diver with 7-strand, and I had put 19-strand on my deeper diver. And at one time, I set them both at the same setting, one on each side, and I came up and I looked at my angle on that wire on each side. As I went deeper, that 7-strand started angling more. The 19-strand, it angled, but it wasn't going quite as far as the 7-strand. And I thought, how can that be? And then I started thinking, if I've got 240 feet of wire line out, there's, just like our downriggers, there's a loop going to that diver. If you're using I use the deeper diver, that number 124, the big one with the heavy weight. I like those for my deeper divers. So as I'm thinking of this, I've always had the picture that that's just a straight line down to that diver when them fish hit. It's just because of the way they hit those things, it's solid, But then I started thinking, okay, if I've got that drag in that wire, do I have a bow in my line that might be, going down to that diver? Or do I have that much drag on the wire? Talked to a few people and got their opinions, and we all kind of thought, you know what? It's very, very possible that we do have some type of drag resistance as we're going through the water that's causing maybe a little bit of a loop in our line. It doesn't seem like it because when a fish hits, you know, all the energy is right there in those rods. So it's just something that I always think about, and when I think of something like that, I put that in perspective of how I'm going to run my diver, especially when I'm running forward. So let's talk a little bit about the 19 strand. Now we've got more of those individual strands. Now we're making more of a smoother circle than we are if we have two, then one, then one, you know what I mean? So with the 19 strands, we have a smoother wire, less drag, and I did see that when I started running that. The kink break on the 19 strand was breaking around 30 pounds. So that made me a lot happier, knowing that that break strength was there for that. If you want to go and see those break strengths, Torpedo Fishing Products has YouTube videos of breaking the wire and breaking the coppers and stuff like that with it. So good thing to check out. The other thing about the 19 strand, it forgives the kinks a little better. I did notice that, you know, when I was tying my knots with it, I just tied an overhand knot is what I use with a small piece of tubing to go over that knot to protect it. And I noticed when I was tying that 19 strand, it was a little bit more forgiving, and it wasn't like I was trying to really have to pull to get any kind of tightening on that knot. So it was very forgiving. It also has 3 times more flexible than a 7 strand because of the multi-strands. It was really flexible. It felt a whole lot softer. Smoother. It's also got a smoother feed in through your guides. We all know what wire can do to a cheap guide. It'll cut it in no time. Last year, I was running full roller rods, and at the beginning of last year, we didn't know what the season was going to be like. So I right away I thought, okay, my expenditures got to go down. You know, I've got plenty of spare stuff that if something goes down, I'm not going to go out and buy new stuff. I'm going to pull something out of here. Well, you know, if you run any of the Shimano Tellura rods, you know that those roller tips are not very, very good. The 7 strand likes to jump in between the roller and the guides, the wall, side wall, which slices that wire up immediately. I had one that was giving me a lot of problems. The little guide was starting to get a groove in it, you know, and this is years of using them. So instead of buying a new rod, a new roller guide, I just grabbed one of my copper rods from down in the basement, put my wire diver on that thing, and I ran it all season, and believe it or not, those guides on that Tellura rod held up on the 19 strand. It really held up. So that told me that was much smoother going through than some of the rougher wires. When it all started, we used to go buy our wire just right from, you know, anybody that had wire. It was picture wire, it was whatever kind of wire was out there. Now they're making good wire that is coated. We're learning how to work with it. One thing I can tell you, one little secret on wire, anytime you cut it, we all have our favorite pliers, whether it be a needle nose, a side cutters, whatever it is, and we crimp that. Well, that makes a flat point when it cuts it. I bought actual wire cutters, and now it cuts it, and I've got a round cut. I mean, it doesn't pinch it, it doesn't crimp it, it's a nice round clean cut. And the little thing I learned, and I learned it from, you know, another fisherman that you know how we are. When you cut that and you got a nice fresh cut, take a little bit of super glue, just one drop, put it on that end, let it harden up on there, give it, you know, a little bit to dry. Now those strands aren't coming apart. You can work with it a little better that way. I did it with both the 7 strand and the 19 strand, and it was equally did the job of holding those strands together. So, you know, a little tidbit there. Some of the things about wire. Most wire we buy comes in 1,000-foot spools. I've had guys say, well, why would you put 1,000 feet of wire on there? And my first thought is because that's how I buy it. It comes in a 1,000-foot spool. It's very small in diameter. I can put it on a 600 Dakota with some backing on there. I can fish all year and not have a problem with it. Especially now that we're going deeper and deeper up north of the state line in the summer months. I want a lot of wire on there. Guys are saying, well, I cut mine in half. I put 500 feet and I can get 2 reels out of that. That's fine. But when you start going out deeper, you're going to see your backing. And we all know that if you get a big king on there, you get something that wants to pull some line out of there, you're going to be holding your breath that you can, get it all back on the reel. The 1,000-foot spools are easier to, I shouldn't say that because they're not easy no matter how many feet you have to put on your reel. But I find with 1,000 feet, once you've got that on your reel and you get your terminal tackle on the end, it stays on the reel a little bit smoother, especially when you're letting it out. A couple mistakes that I see a lot of people make. They say, when I let it out, I always get kinks. And then you talk to them a little bit and you find out they're free spooling their reel and they're just letting that diver take it out. Well, that diver is going to go a lot faster than that reel's letting it out, especially if they don't have the tension set, and you're going to get a kink. All my divers, when I set them, I put it in the rod holder, I loosen my drag until it's a steady pull going out. And then I can go over to this one, I can get that one going, I can watch this one, watch that one, I can get my front one, I can loosen that drag. Now I got 2 of them going down, they're separated real nice. And then when I get to my depth, I can get them over here, check my drags. I can put 4 rods, get 4 rods going, and nice, slow, steady pace to get down there. Keeps tension on that wire, it doesn't jump. I think a lot of that has to do with what happens in that roller guide. When you get a little bit of loop in there, you're going too fast, it likes to jump. When I loosen just that drag and just kind of let it steady go out, it's keeping a real good tension on there and I don't get those issues on it. 2 other things that I've learned. One, when you reel your diver up. Now I've got customers that believe and they still try year after year, same customers, to reel a diver through my guides because they get it to the tip and they're still like this. I put a piece of tube, rubber tube, just a fuel line type tube, between my snap swivel and the tip. So when they reel up there, I've got a cushion there now. They're not pounding my knot on the wire, and they're not tearing up the tip, whether it be a roller guide or not a regular guide. That little piece of rubber really helps. Get it big enough so it doesn't go inside your guides. If it does, just grab a bead, put a bead ahead of it. I've got, when I started using the Tellura copper rods with the steel guides on it, they got big wide tip on the end of it. My tubes were going through it, so I had to put a bead ahead of it. And all I did is, again, it stopped it from getting to my knot and tearing up my tip. That was one thing, always reel it in. I get somebody on the boat that wants to help me, they'll get the diver right to the back, the wire diver right to here, and then they set the rod down, and I just had some slack, and there goes, I've had divers snap off just because of that slack. So reel it all the way to the tip and then bring it in and do what you got to do. The other thing is when you're under power, and I know I'm not the only one. Has anybody ever lost with a wire diver, had their divers hanging off the back, and as you're bouncing like this, and then you get out the fish and you look and your diver's gone, and I have. Always in a hurry, right? I always take my divers and I put the divers inside, my wire divers, I put the divers inside the boat because just that bouncing on the tip like this. Remember, 7 strand was breaking at 17, 18 pounds. Just that big diver bouncing with the tip like this as I'm hitting waves, they would break them. So I've learned to make sure that they're brought inside and they don't have that bounce. If they happen to break, they're in the back of the boat and I can just retie. I know a lot of guys are using small crimps to do all of their termination. Crimps are good, but we learned years ago crimping downriggers, how many downrigger weights we lost because crimps pinch that cable. They pinch that wire. You may have 7 strands, you crimp it down, 2 or 3 of them may be right there, they're sheared a little bit, and now you got a weak spot. So be careful when you're crimping that wire. We talked a little bit. Any questions on wire diver before I go on to lead core?
One thing, Jerry.
Yeah.
What is the break strength of the 19? I've been using 7 and considering going to 19. Better? Is it better?
Overall, Scott, here's, and this is my 2 cents into it. I felt it performed better. My knots were better.
Yeah.
I had the confidence in that brake strength after I watched them do that one. Overall, I felt the 19 strand was worth the extra few bucks. It kinks. It just seems like it has less tendency to kink, and that was important to me. But if you haven't, if it's something you're thinking about, you can. That's what I did. Is I just went out, I bought a spool, and I set one set up and ran that one, high and low and all around, and kind of just put it through the test. And I said, well, I'm going to get another one. I like the way that's run. This year I'll have all 4 will be 19. The diameter is the same. You're not getting a bigger wire. The strength is just much better. Okay. Like I said, that one was breaking around 30 pounds, where the other ones were 15, 17, 18 pounds. So something to think about. Any other questions on?
How about the memory on the 19? You get them loose sometimes in the wire. It's
Less
kind of
memory.
less
Absolutely less memory. What's a good example? Back in the day when we were running big game, Trilene big game, that was on every rod we had. It was Trilene big game monofilament. We didn't have fluorocarbon. We didn't have any of these brays, nothing like that. A fresh spool big game Trilene put on a reel, it just seemed like everything just laid perfect. After fishing a season, all of a sudden now my pawls wore out because that's pens, but nothing's laying right. When I was using that 19 strand, I just felt that in and out, however many times on a trip, twice a day. Every time I looked at that reel, it just seemed like it was laying really, really smooth. I talked to a few guys that had been running the 19 strand before I did, and their big thing was, man, it just lays so nice on the reel. Letting it out, bringing it in, letting it out, it just lays nice on there. So it tells me it's a lot smoother. It almost feels like it's softer, but it's not softer in a weak point. If you get an opportunity to go, to one of the shops, grab a spool of that 19 strand. Always, whenever you grab a spool of wire, always put your finger and hold that. Because when you pop this one out, so I always hold this, but you can bring that out and just, bring out enough that you can just kind of roll around on your hand, twist it a little bit, and just say, man, that does feel a little different. And then grab the 7 strand right after that, and you'll see immediately what I'm talking about. Yep.
Okay, so do you have a comment on snubbers? Because there's a lot of people who are
Snubbers.
not using them now, and the 9-inch lure Jackson ones, to me, I've had more problems with them,
Yeah.
the tangles, versus the clear 4-inch ones that have a
Yep.
shock absorber in them. They're
Yep.
really tough, thin ones.
Snubbers,
A lot of people
yeah, snubbers back in the day, you did not run a Dipsy diver without a snubber on it. They had red and yellow and green, and you matched them to your diver and you matched them to your flash. We had all kinds of silly stuff we did. That particular rubber deteriorates pretty quickly over time. Sun, in and out of the water, drying, and you'll get a fish and they'll just pop. Then you got a piece of Dacron laying there. The ones that are out now, let me think here. Dreamweaver has them. Who's the other big one of that clear one? Manufacturer. Yeah, there's Dreamweaver and there's somebody else that, Cortland. Cortland's got them. They're very strong. You look at them and you see where it goes through the swivel and then it's just melted onto the side and you're going, no way. The first time I ever got one, I ran a piece of wire, I wrapped it like this, and just stretched that thing. I was bound and determined to break that little melting point. They're fantastic. I do not run snubbers on any of my mono sets in the spring. I don't run them on my Power Pro, but when it comes to my wire divers, I have one on, absolutely. With the rods I'm using, there's no stretch of wire. You know, everything is so bulky and so stiff all the way through. You've got to have something there that's going to give. And those little 4-inch ones are by far superior over the Lure Johnson ones. Yeah.
Couple of questions I'll read off the internet.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So from our buddy Racine Rob, what is your method for tying wire to a swivel?
Tying wires to a swivel. I'll use a piece of lead core here. You guys can see it. If this is my swivel head here, my ring, I just come over like this, run an overhand knot, one like this, put it through again. Yeah, now the lead's gonna. And then I go through that overhand knot. Just pull all that tight. It's a tight knot, but it's not. What I'm trying to avoid is kinks. So to tie a fisherman's knot, tie something that, you know, you got to spin around, twist, turn, pull back through, and then pull tight. You're weakening that wire. Just a simple overhand knot and that type of one works out just fine. But I protect my knots with a little piece of rubber tubing over the top.
Another internet question, when you use the old Talora rods for wire, were you using twilly tips or roller tips?
The old Talora rods, I was using just the regular tip that came on it, regular steel. The twilly tips, I know guys love them, absolutely love them. I don't. It's just, to me, it's a spring and it's something that I'm going to get tangled in and have an issue with. So I did use them once, didn't like them, took them off. This year, I went with the expense and I bought the torpedo, the new torpedo roller guides. Comes with shrink tube. They'll fit just about every rod. They're super solid, and that problem with the roller and the two sidewalls went away because they're very, very tight on where the roller is.
Last question off the internet. The dive charts you talked about, are they effective? It says 7th strand versus 19th strand with the same size dive.
There was a difference. Dive charts, everybody remember, dive charts are just something to get a start with. It's going to depend on your boat speed. It's going to depend on current. It's going to depend on wind and which angle you're taking that wind, which angle you're taking that current. All of that's going to affect that dive chart. What you're running, spoon compared to a flash or fly. All of that, again, is going to make a difference on the dive chart. Dive chart's just somewhere to get a good pinpoint of start, and then start catching fish and keeping a memory of where I'm, on that line counter on them divers, where my bites have been coming from. Stick around that number and just go there daily until I stop biting. But there was a difference in the 19th strand compared to the 7th strand. I felt the 19th strand was reaching those depths quicker than with less line out than the 7th strand. Just seemed like the 7th strand had a little bit more hanging behind the boat than the 19th strand. Anything else on the wire? Let's move on to lead core. Talked a little bit about it when we started. Lead core's been around forever. It went away. All this new stuff came out. We didn't need lead core no more. Now lead core is used from spring to fall. Any of you guys use lead core in the spring for your coho sets?
Yep, 1-2 color.
Yep, 1, 2, 3s. I know guys that they'll run 1, 2, 3s on this side, 1, 2, 3s on this side. They may run 2 1s, a 2 and a 3. They're using lead core for their weights. Then as you get into, the water starts to warm and you're offshore a little bit, you're fishing some steelhead. I don't know about you guys, but we have suspended lake trout like unbelievable in June, especially end of May, beginning of June. We're out fishing the cohos out over on the other side of the structure, and we can't keep lake trout off of our sets, our coho sets. My best lake trout set for the season last year, I caught more lake trout on a 1/4 ounce weight. I use trolling weights, I don't use lead cores. A 1/4 ounce weight with an Alderton flasher and a green peanut fly. I caught more lake trout on that than I did anything else the rest of the season, including spin glows. But lead cores, we're getting smarter. We're using it in our favor. We've learned how to, anybody not familiar with lead core? Good, so I don't have to go through all that. We're learning to take 10 yards off, 20 yards off for a 2-color. When you hear on the radio and you hear guys talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 colors, 7 colors, 10 colors, or full core, that's another term. They're just talking about different lengths of lead core. Obviously, the different lengths you have, the deeper your bait's gonna go. Now again, I've got a chart in here that I give out at my class, and all these guys are saying, Jerry, I tried that chart with the lead core, and it just seems like I'm a lot higher than what the chart's saying. I'm not catching the fish that you're saying that, you know, a 3-color should catch. Well, you start talking to them, and they're going extremely fast, or they're putting a flasher fly on instead of on there where it says that, you know, this is with a 4-inch spoon. You put that flasher fly on, and all of a sudden, it's lifting up in the water column. Again, fishing with lead core is something you really need to put the time in, get it dialed in, get your program dialed in, your lead core program dialed in, and make mental notes. I've got a notebook on the dash of my book. Every year I put a new one up there. By the end of the season, it's full. Just mental notes that I know that at my age I don't stay up here anymore. So I got to run up to my dash and make a quick note on something that I know that I'm going to have to come back to. And you'll be surprised year after year. You go to that notebook and you're seeing some of that same stuff happen at the same time of the year. But lead core is not only being used by itself. I talked to guys at seminars and sports shows that are using, we all know about the secret weapon on a downrigger. That when that came over here, it was a secret for a long time. And then all of a sudden it got to the west side of the lake, and we were talking about it on the radio. We were telling all our friends, hey, you got to put 3 colors or 2 colors down on your center rigger. That thing's been hotter than fire. So they're using different lengths on downriggers. When fishing got tough, I talked to one of our small boat anglers that, you know, I see him all the time. He came down, he said, Jerry, you know what my best rod was today? I said, what was that? He said, fishing has been slow, and I haven't been doing good. Now that water got warm, I haven't been doing real good. He said, so I put halfway down in the water column, and where he was fishing was probably about 70 feet of water. He said, halfway down, I put a full color lead core on my downrigger, and that thing was so good. He said, what made it so good? I said, because it was something they haven't seen. It was something was different down there, and they really liked it. And I'm thinking, okay, do I or don't I? Nah, I'm not good. But he had something that he played with, got it going. And if you think about it, when you run lead core on a downrigger, you have your downrigger ball. We have our release right here, and we're running monofilament or fluorocarbon. Our bait is directly in line with that downrigger ball. We're using, loosely termed, bigger balls these days. You know, because of what I do in the summertime and where we've been fishing, you know, I switch my deep rates to 20 pounders. I'm running 12s pretty much all the time in the spring and summer, early part of the summer. So you've got a lot of commotion that's coming off of that downrigger ball to your bait. And I honestly believe by looking at video footage of these salmon that they come in hard and then they get in that water turbulence off of your downrigger ball, especially the big round solid ones. The fish ones are a little more streamlined, they don't create as much. But if I watch videos with the big round ones and they come up there and it's just, they peel off. Without even looking like they're striking at the bait or they had any interest, they just peeled off. And again, I'm one of those overthinkers, and I'm thinking, why did that fish peel off? And then I watch more and more video, and I started thinking about that, and I'm thinking, well, that's why the SWR works so good, because with that weighted line, now our bait's running down here, the ball's up above it, there's less turbulence over at that bait. And that's what, you know, as the SWR got more and more and more popular, guys were experimenting with 3 colors and 4 colors underneath that with some success too. So lead core is being used a lot of different ways. The other thing that's getting popular is a guy's using a short lead, maybe let's say a 3-color lead. The water temperature is getting warm. He's got a smaller boat. He can't carry a lot of extra gear. So what he's doing is he's putting snap weights at where his lead core meets his backing, whether it be Power Pro, whatever he uses. He's putting a snap weight on there. Now he's doubling up on what that rig he's got is he can utilize it later in the summer by adding weight to it. Fantastic idea. I believe it'll work. I believe it's something that a lot of guys in the small boats that can't, store the rods like I have on a bigger boat. So if I need if all of a sudden a 200 copper is going good, I've got another one here I can put on this side, or I've got, I've always got plenty on board. A lot of smaller boats just don't have that storage. So if a guy can set up a 5-color lead and then throw a 1-ounce weight on there and get his bait down deeper and catch fish on it, have at it. Some of the other things, lead core, I can tell you, again, going back in the 80s when we didn't have trolling boards, the inline trolling boards, a lot of the boats were still using outriggers. That changed. Instead of running just 3 lead cores behind, we started running multiple lead cores on the outriggers. Then the big boards came out and the masts, and we were sliding lead cores as the summer and the water temperature got up. We could continue fishing on top. In the day, when we trolled the cohos in the spring, when that coho bite stopped, our boards went in the bucket and we didn't see them again until fall. There was just no fish that we could touch in that water column because of the warm water. They were down deeper. We had downriggers, that was it. Divers, we had the pink ladies then, but to get down deep, that thing was, a mile back behind the boat. We are very lucky that we have advanced where we are, because now we can target fish and stay on them. I teach a class up in Kenosha. It's my 3rd year doing it. And I was so surprised on a lot of guys that still had that old mentality of, the water's warm, I got to take my boards out, and now I've got to run just downriggers and divers. With these weighted lines, my boards never leave. They're in my program. I may cut back, at times, but my class is named top to bottom because that's what I've been doing about the last 6-7 years. My season, I've always, we don't get the cohos on the beach anymore like we used to. So I've got extra water that I know that there's fish in, that now I can put a little bit of a weighted line and get down below where I would normally fish for the cohos. And I'm picking up steelhead there. I'm picking up suspended lake trout. When last year at the end of May, that weekend we opened up, that was one of my best, probably 5 or 6 days for consistent kingfishing last spring. And it was all coming at, a downrigger that was down near the bottom. Had to have been, low 40s for water temperature, but those kings were there, and that's where I was catching them. So the weighted lines fall into a lot of different categories. Probably the most popular outside of lead
Can I
core.
interrupt you real quick?
Yep.
Questions since
Yep.
it's time.
Go for it.
A couple more basic questions. What brake strength lead core do you use? I have a feeling I know the answer, but I'm getting questions here leading me to believe that there are people out there that still think that the higher the number, the heavier it is, which isn't the truth, and you can explain that.
Nope. I use the 45 pound.
Okay.
I was using 27 for a long time, but it just seemed like it deteriorated a lot faster. What makes 27 and 45 isn't the amount of lead that's in there, it's the amount of weaving on the outer coating. They got more material there, it's tighter, it makes it stronger. The micro leads is another one. I get a lot of questions on the micro leads. They say, well, I want to stay away from them, they're going to break too easy. No, it's not that. It's the coating that's over the top is where your strength comes from. Do you have any more questions off of there?
No, that was
Okay.
it.
There's a lot of...
3 people though with the same question.
Oh, okay. There's a lot of manufacturers of lead core. I can honestly say that I've never heard of one that's worse than the other. a lot of guys, walleye guys, swear by the Bass Pro, the Magic Braid lead core that Bass Pro has, Cabela's has. Walleye guys swear by it. I've been using the Cortland. I've been using, what was that other one that we used to use a lot of? The Suffix is Big Mason. Mason is the other one that's been around for a long time. Tough Line, they're the one that they make a regular one, they make the micro. I have not used the micro. I can't tell you what it does compared to a normal 45-pound lead core, but the Mason has been probably, you know, I buy it in big spools, so I've been using that for years. One thing I can tell you about the care of lead core, talk to a guy that has his lead cores out. He gets back to the dock, he leaves them in his rod holders or up in his rocket launcher, and they stay there all week until next weekend when he comes to fish. Lead core breaks down very quickly. You can actually get lead core to where you can just snap it like you're using 2-pound test. Get them out of the sun, get them out of the heat. One thing I do inside my boat is, even on a rainy day, I've got a fan inside my boat that blows air around in there. So even if it's warm in there and I've got the windows cracked a little bit, I've got circulation. That seems to help, especially with your fluorocarbon and your mono and your lead core. Keeps it from that heat tearing it up. But always check it. Check your knots around lead core. I've seen guys with lead core and they got big fluffy, where their knot was, it's all the copper, the coating of the lead core has now come apart. All of that weaving has come apart. Well, it's all come apart, but it's not in a position to give you any strength. And that's a weak spot, and it pops very, very easily. So I'm a everyday check my knots, check my leaders type of guy, and if I don't like the looks of a knot, I just retie it. I mean, it's just simple. A lot more than getting out there and having something break off with a good fish on it for a customer, and losing my gear. That's my biggest thing. Any more questions on the lead core? Anybody use a 10 color and just stick with a 10 color? No?
Kippy. That's what a lead core is.
It's all 10.
It's a lead core. How many colors? What do you mean it's a lead core? What do you mean it's a lead core?
I met a guy at a show that told me they do make a 200-yard lead core. The manufacturer makes 200 yards on it.
We like our customers.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going there.
Most of them.
Yeah.
That's a bachelor party rod.
Yeah. But you know what, though? He swears by it that, I catch more fish on that than anything else. And I'm going, see, this is the problem I have. And we're going to go right into copper. Once you get beyond like a 5-color lead core, I can reach that same depth with a lot less copper. And I get a lot of people say, well, I hear people, a 7-color and a 10-color is working good, and and I tell them, I say, you know what, think about a 10-color and having that football field back there, having it on a board that's also off to the side of the boat, and then you get a good fish on there and he rips off more line. You got a long battle on your hands. It's going to be a while before you get that fish in. With copper, you can get to those depths with less line, and that's where copper stepped in. Copper came into the market, somebody was using it and realized that they could reach a depth that a 10-color lead core could reach with, under a half of the length, which made it easier, which made it better. We can tone down on the size of the reels we need until you get in this, some of these guys swear by their 400s and their 450s. I have no use for them. But copper, there's several different manufacturers of copper. This is the bloodline, what they call a super copper. It's a silver. They're the only ones making it in silver, and it's got a plating on it. I like it. I like it better than the Masons and better than the Cortland and some of the, that copper color one. But the problem, and we all know it if you run coppers, the problem with copper is super soft. Very, very soft. Kinks come in it very, very easily. when this stuff started breaking, in fact, I think I wrote down some of the break weights on coppers. The super copper was breaking at around 21 pounds. So a 45-pound copper was, I'm pretty sure that's what I used, 45, yeah, was breaking at about 21 with a kink in it. So that's half. The Cortland, the AFW copper, and the Howies was breaking about 3 or 4 pounds more than this was. So those kinks are huge, absolutely huge. And I don't know about you, but I start my season, all my coppers, I redo them. If they have any mending I had done in it or anything that it was from the previous season, I strip it off, I put a new one, get it all fresh for the season. And I work my butt off to keep it straight, to let it out easy. When the knots come, I baby the knots through all the eyes. I get it out there, Everything goes good. And then all of a sudden we're fighting a fish and I'm going, you gotta be kidding me. And I look down that copper and I can see a strand that has come off. And it gets to the tip and it binds up to a big bird nest. And I just want to grab the rod with the customer and throw the whole thing in there. But copper does that. That's the drawback of copper, is that it's very, very soft. But it's a great, great fishing tool to get down and get some of those depths of that we can't touch with anything else. The problem is, like you said, it takes a lot of reeling. If you're running a 300, 350 foot copper and you get a 20-pound lake trout on it, just let us know if you need a sandwich or you want something to drink, because it's going to be a while. And it's not a lot of fun. Last year, I don't know if maybe you guys have heard of it. I never heard of it up by me in all my years. We were in first part of September. I was out in 240 some feet of water. I had a downrigger I had right on the bottom, took off with a king. Nice 4-year-old, got it up, I netted it. And I knew that I had my first 30-pounder in a long time. 33 pounds on the scale. It was ecstatic. Was setting that one, the other deep one takes off, and it goes just, wasn't fighting like a king. Now think about it, it's on the bottom, 240 feet of water, plus I've got it back, plus the fish is taking line. I'm worried about my coppers that I got running behind my boards, because this fish is going to come up like this if it's a lake trout. So I'm bringing in, I've got 350 coppers, I'm just getting them out of the way, because I know that this fish is going to get into them. We fought this fish and fought this fish and fought this fish. I swore we had a foul hooked fish. Finally, I see it come up on top, probably a good 150 yards behind the boat. The guy works it, and he works it, and I'm just waiting. Any minute now, I know it's going to come off. I know it's going to come off. We get it to the back of the boat, and when I went to net it, as soon as I got it in the net, I just closed my eyes, I lifted it up, because I knew I had done something I'd never done before, and that's put 2 30-pound fish in the boat simultaneously on 2 different bites, both off the bottom at 240 feet of water. That was a 30-pound lake trout. And that poor guy said, Jerry, I don't want another bite. I don't care what it is, where it's at, I'm not reeling in another fish. And that was the last thing I wanted to hear, because we were only halfway through our trip. I was hoping to have more action and get them back on it. But, when you start running coppers, you start running long coppers, to get down into some of that, that water that we are just not effective at with the downriggers, but you get a copper in there and you can catch fish on. It just takes a lot of work on those long coppers. Plus, the cost on it. It isn't cheap to buy your coppers. That's why if I get a fray in one, I just take it apart, I mend it, and we put it right back in the water, because it's very, very costly. But it also is part of my program, probably from my coppers start coming out about mid-June, 3rd week of June. As soon as I know that water temperature is in the upper 60s and down 70 feet, I'm still hitting mid-60 water temperature, I start bringing coppers out. And eventually that's all I'll have on my boards. I'll run 6 coppers. I may run, you know, if the water temperature is decent up high and we're still catching fish up there, I may run a 100 to 150. A lot of guys like to run 50-foot coppers. They like to run 75-foot coppers. Great, have at it. You know, I can catch fish at that level in the water column with other presentations that are, you know, a little easier for me. But my coppers, once I start running them, you know, one thing that a lot of guys are doing more and more every year is they're running different presentations on their coppers. It used to be all spoons. You know, when you put your coppers out, you put your spoons out. Some of my best flasher fly hits were on my coppers. We had cohos up in Kenosha all season, and you know, all our big cohos. I was running a big B&B with a green crinkle cut behind it, and I was running it on my 200 copper, and that thing was an absolute stud for those cohos late in the season. It was very, very good. The other thing I'm hearing, you know, a lot of guys are doing with their copper sets is they're running their meat rigs on coppers. They're running clean meat rigs. When I say clean, it's just the bait head, no flies ahead of it, and they're running it. There's nice long leader of fluorocarbon. They're putting it out behind a copper and letting that thing roll out there and having a lot of success with it. They're also running spin docks with their meat rigs behind coppers, their deep coppers, 300s, 350s, 275s, all in that range. A lot of guys are running spin doctors down there behind coppers and doing very well. So the copper line is a very, very good tool. It's a very important tool. It allows you to put 6 more lines and get them down in that level of water where the fish are hanging out. And it's away from the boat, it's away from the down near weights, it's away from the dipsy divers or the deep divers. And it's just kind of a clean, quiet presentation. Sometimes, some days those are where all the fish come from, or on your coppers. Other days they don't want nothing to do with them, but your other stuff at the back of the boat's good. But it's a good tool to have. Now last year, I was introduced and ran the weighted steel for the first time. Anybody have running this? The torpedo weighted steel? I'm going to pass these around. I want you guys to look at these. You can pull a little off the spool, and just kind of compare that to a copper. You guys have to work with it more here. The weighted steel is something that came along a couple years ago. Torpedo did it. I ran it for the first time last year. I was introduced to it on another boat I ran. And I went to pull his coppers out, and I'm looking, I'm going, where's his coppers? That ain't copper, what is that? You know, and I text him real quick, what are your, he said, that's that weighted steel. He said, run it just like the coppers. The cool thing is, it's the same diameter as your coppers, okay? Not heavier, it's not thicker, it's the same diameter. 0.0636, I think it is, whatever that is. The advantage of it is it's softer, it lays on your reel much, much better. It does not kink, hardly at all. If it does have a kink, it's not even a kink, it's just a little loop that you can just undo and it's fine. You know, as these come around, you know, just kind of play with a little bit. 20 feet, what is it now? 20 feet per... Yep, for every 100 out, you're going to get approximately 20 feet of depth. And again, that's going to depend on your boat speed, what you're running behind it, and everything else. I can tell you that the day I was introduced to it, I fell in love with it just because I could let it off on my reel. I could put my drag reel loose once I got some out there, and it just real nicely went out. Brought it all back in when we were fighting fish. No kinks, you know, it was just very, very smoothly. So I went out and I bought a couple 200-foot spools, set up a couple rods, and they were just fantastic, fantastic. The cost on it is about the same as copper. And again, when you're cutting this stuff, you know, you want to make a good clean cut. I did find that out. Now the one drawback, there is a couple captains that are starting to learn how to tie this stuff. They're using the Power Pro, it's a hollow braid, as their backing. And he literally takes a long needle that is hollow, that's the same diameter as the wire. He's running that inside that hollow Power Pro until the end of the needle comes out. And then he shoves that wire in, pulls the needle out, and it's just, you have to watch the video. It's on the Torpedo website. When he's done, he literally has mended that steel inside the Power Pro, and it's completely flat. Nothing goes through your eyes more smoothly than that. And I can't wait to try it. It's not something you can do on the boat. I mean, I don't have the time for it. But to set up my initial ones, if the strength holds like he was showing, I'm going to try it. But there are guys that are learning how to tie this stuff. Right now, the best way for anybody to use it, they sell a terminal kit with the crimps, with the shrink tube, already in the pack. I think you get 8 setups for $1 something. It's very inexpensive. And once you do that terminal, you crimp it, you got your swivel, you got a little barrel swivel that's in there, and then you put your fluorocarbon on there, or you attach to your backing. I can tell you that I was so excited about running the 2 I did for most of the season, and this year I'm going to all steel. I'm gonna bite the bullet, and I'm gonna go to all steel and try to hopefully cut back on some of the issues that copper does bring. Again, same diameter, same depth in the water column. It comes in 1, 2, 3, and 400, or no, 50, 100, 200, 300, and 400. So 5 lengths already pre-cut. The ends are done. They go on your reel just like your copper does. So I mean, it's a new product. It's a couple years old. Right now, Torpedo's the only one running it, but it is something that is blowing the market up. A lot of guys are using it, and they're seeing the simplicity of using it, and all the drawbacks of copper now are, you know, going away because this stuff goes onto the reel so much smoother. If you want to, I've got brochures for Torpedo. If you go online and you order it, you know, you can mention Resolute Charters and you'll get a discount. She hasn't set it up yet, but she said, just because I told her I was coming to the meeting tonight, she said just tell them to mention that when they order, and she'll give them a discount. But it is something, if you want to try it, pick up a spool when we get to that point in the season, and give it a shot. See what you think. I like it. I like it better than the copper, and I've been a die-hard copper fisherman for many, many years, but I really like this new weighted steel. There's a lot of good articles, a lot of stuff on YouTube.
What lengths do you have pre-tied on your boat that you use for the weighted steel?
200.
All 200?
Well, my 200 coppers last year were by far my best presentations I had of all my coppers. Those were constantly getting hit every day, you know, 4 or 5 times a trip. So I was running 2 200s. I had one on each side. When I switched over to the weighted steel, I put one out and it was still busy, and then I put the other one out, and you know, I didn't see a decline or an increase on my hits, but it stayed busy. Both of them stayed busy at 200 foot. When I talked to a captain out in New York, when I decided to join up with Torpedo, he's in his 3rd year of using all steel, and he said, I'll never go back to copper now that I've run it, I've learned it. He said, you got to be patient, because it's like anything else new, whether it was the copper, lead core, whatever it was. Don't rush into things. You know, just keep doing what you're doing. He said, you'll be fine. He said, the biggest drawback on this weighted steel is the little tiny barrel swivel that you put on it. But I know guys, that's how they do their coppers. They don't tie a knot, they don't use anything, they put barrel swivels on You know, they got 2 of them on their coppers. Yes.
So you, obviously, like, wire divers are either on or they're off because they have a certain presentation, right? No stretch and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But, you know, the way that you're talking now, the question is whether you have 10 colors of lead or the equivalent copper to get to that same depth. And we have like 20 to 30 foot fluoro leaders that are similar and they're running similar baits. Do you not feel that there's a presentation difference between a copper and a lead as far as the action of the bait? It's just strictly a opportunity to run less line to get the same depth. Because, and I only ask because
No, that's a great
I've
question.
heard a lot of commentary over the years that presentation is different as far as the action on a similar bait and blah, 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 you know, with light fluoro leaders and.
It falls in the category of, now if I can't remember the term, some type of electrical current that they were putting, that they felt downrigger line had. They felt when we started this, that was the whole thing with the coppers. You know, it's giving out this vibe to the fish.
I am the cannon with you.
Yes. Do I believe in that? No. I've had the cannons with the ion on it. I've run them with and without. I've used the Scotties that has them with and without. Nobody, I can't be convinced that's the magic that's catching the fish. I think it's the presentation, it's the speed, it's the location, you know, just what we all know. When it comes to lead core and copper, I think lead core for me is more of a convenience for high in the water column. Again, from all my coho rigs, I like to use trolling weights. I use keel weights. Have been since beginning of time. Now I like to run when I start, if our cohos are out in 100 feet of water, 150 feet of water, my outside lines are going to be 1 and 2 colors because I've got flies that are going to catch steelhead also with the cohos out there. Would I run, you know, a 50-foot copper, 75-foot copper? Probably, but the issues that come with the copper, you know, cohos and me don't get along. So when I get a coho on, I don't care how big it is, somehow he's going to get into something that he's not supposed to be in. And I don't want coppers out there with them crazy ass cohos in the springtime especially. So the lead core is a little more forgiving than the copper. If I ran a 10 color lead and I ran a 150 foot copper, where would I bet my money on? Copper. I think the copper is going to outproduce that 10 color, even though they're going to be very close in the water level.
So you're saying that the action is not, or you are saying that.
I don't know if it's the action, if it's the way it's being presented at more of a direct than it is laying out. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a scientist, I'm a fisherman. I just take notes on what's working, and I try to do that same thing every day till it stops. I know that my coppers, you know, especially guys that are running 7 color, 9 color, 10 color leads, at the end of the day, if we were to put catch to catch, I did a little better with my coppers. And I've shown a couple guys that, you know, over and over, and they finally understand what I'm saying. But, like I tell everybody at every seminar, at every speaking engagement, you have to run your program. Your boat is going to fish different than mine. We can have the same exact setup, same program. You go on your boat, I go on my boat, and we're going to have different results because we all do a little bit different things on our boat. Could be just the way our boat trolls, the way it handles in a wind, the way it handles in a current. I don't know about you guys, but we had currents last year that I felt like I was sitting like doing this in my boat because down below was so crazy with current that I couldn't keep anything on the bottom because the current was so bad. And I had to go probably about another 8 miles north in order to find a good place to fish without all that current. And that's another thing with these weighted lines. We get the currents up there pretty bad to where, you know, our surface speed and our bottom speed sometimes are 2 miles an hour difference. And when you find that, get the hell out of there because your fishing is not going to be that good. But the way it affects your trolling lines, especially your weighted lines, it's really heavy. And another thing, if you're fishing sideways into a wind and you're getting pushed, and you've got all your lines are at an angle like this, you've got to get the best angle by maneuvering your boat. And if it's going to be taking a wave on, then pull them out, because they're not going to fish efficiently if you're getting blown sideways and your wire divers are sitting like this. They're screaming down there. You get a bite on this one, he's in a downrigger. You get a bite on this one, he's in your boards out here. When we get those heavy winds, that's the first thing I do is I try to find the best troll for my customers, best troll for my presentations. I may go from 12 rods, 11 rods to 8 or 9 rods just because I can keep 8 or 9 working efficiently rather than trying to show a full spread. I'd rather take 8 or 9 and have them working right than having 12 and have half of them not working and half of them working just because of the wind or the current. And that's a whole nother seminar, but just understand that weighted lines, they're super important in our yearly catch. Without them, I'd honestly say maybe about 45% of our fish that I catch would not be caught if it wasn't for weighted lines. Wire divers, like I told you last year, they were outstanding. I had to learn how to dial in the divers and my rod holders and everything so I could run 4 of them efficiently without getting tangles. And it took a little bit of time, a little work, but we got it to work, and they were just great fish catchers. Lead core, like I said, the lead core is being run year round now. There's guys that are starting in the spring with very short leads and progressing into longer leads as the water gets warm in the top part of the water column. Copper is not something that it's an expensive presentation because you got more copper you put on, the bigger reel you got to have backing behind it. I can't tell you how many times I've gone on somebody's boat, put out 200 feet of copper, and they've got 30-pound Power Pro, and the spool of their reel has no line, no retrieval rate at all because you're doing like this as fast as you can, and it's barely moving anything in because there's no line on there. You gotta bulk that up. So when you're using coppers, the more copper and the longer copper you put out, the bigger the reel you gotta get. When I get into I got a 350 and a 300. My 300 I have on an 800 Dakota, and my 400 I have on an 800 Dakota. And I run, I've been running all monofilament probably the last 3 years as backing. That's why I've got the bigger reels. The braids I've had issues, and guys love braid, I love braid. I would rather have braid on behind this, but it just seems like once I get my board on out there, when I'm fighting a fish, I'm having problems with the braid, and I went back to just my old ways and put mono on. But again, the more copper you use, the bigger reels. The more lead you use, the bigger reels. You got to have capacity on there to put the lead core and the copper and the weighted steel on, but you also got to have capacity to have some backing to fight the fish. Nothing worse than letting all your lead core out and putting your board on and getting that out there, and then you look on your reel and you better hope you don't get anything big because you only got about 50 yards of line to fight the fish. But just like everything we do, go out there. I always tell them, if you can't afford to go out and buy a copper setup, if you're in the Kenosha Harbor, come by my boat. I'll let you use one for a morning trip, just to get used to it. One thing I do in my school that I teach up there is not only do we go in the classroom and we get 8 hours of classroom, but I take my students, I only take 12 students in my class. I take 6 of them out on Saturday, 6 of them out on Sunday. I have all my presentations on board, and the guys that have never run a wire diver get to run wire divers. Guys that never use copper get to use copper, get to use the weighted steel, get to run deep rigs. We go out to 150 feet of water, they get to run deep stuff. Work our way in. It's in May, so we've got plenty of fish around, and so not only are they getting to run some of the presentations they don't normally run on their boat because they just, they don't have them or they're not sure if they want them. Now they get to go out there and they get to run them. And it's been pretty successful. A lot of the guys in the last couple of years that have taken it, And, you know, they always wondered about coppers, they always wondered about wire divers, they always wondered about lead cores, you know, the shorter lead cores and, you know, the knot tying and everything else that we do every day that we take for granted. They got to do it. And, you know, that's the thing, hook up with your buddy. If your buddy's got some of this stuff, if he picks up some steel line and he puts it one together, hook up with him. You know, you guys go out there together and try to figure out if you like it or not. You know, it's really easy in this game to go out there and break your bank book by getting into all the new stuff that's coming out. But sometimes it's just the old stuff with a little new twist can make you successful. You know, we've got a great fishery, we got a great body of water. We're taking care of it the best we can. A lot of encouraging news coming into the spring with Michigan now is going to start putting in more kings. Wisconsin, the next 2 years, are putting in more fish throughout the whole thing. Illinois is back to having a Chinook program. They're increasing their steelhead and their coals. So we're in really good shape. I think our future is good. You know, the biggest thing is, you know, what's going to happen, fuel prices, what's going to happen with, you know, are we going to get any more viruses? I mean, all those question marks. All I can tell you is, myself, I'm going fishing. My customers still came last year. I battled not only the virus, but I battled the riots in Kenosha during my prime time of fishing. I had 2 weeks of solid trips, 2 trips a day, and that went down to, I think I lost about 70% of those just because of what happened in Kenosha. I even moved my boat up to Racine for 2 weeks. I still went fishing. I'm not giving up. I'm not letting it go away. My customers, as long as they're calling, I'm going to take them fishing. Fun fishing, I'm all for it. I love it. I fish tournaments. I always look forward to that first trip on the boat to go out and work the kinks out and get her back up from the winter blues and catch a bunch of coals for myself. So just you know, understand that we've got it. It's there. Don't let it stop you. Get out there, experiment, get your program put together, and keep doing what you're doing now. Come to these things. I would love to go fishing with every one of you guys. I guarantee you guys can teach me something that you do on your boat that I don't do, and I always look for that information. So I appreciate you coming out, listening a little bit to what I do, and hopefully you got something out of it. Any questions? You can get a hold of me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook, Resolute Charters, my name. Message me. Scott's got my number. He can get a hold of me. You guys need anything, you have any more questions, please get a hold of me. I'm here for you guys.
All right, Jerry, thank you very much. You're welcome. Thank you. Real quick before we sign off for you guys at home, again, next month's meeting is April 1st. Tony Kreitz, Sharky Tackle, will be here. And I'm looking forward to it. He's a new speaker for us. Now, we like the repeat speakers like Jerry and everybody too, but he's a new speaker for us. That's always good. One last thing I forgot to make in the announcements. Rob DeFada, who you guys know is a member here. He's a representative he's a manufacturer's rep for a whole bunch of different tackle companies. He sent an email saying, let all you guys know, if you need any tackle, if you need any fishing tackle at all, buy it now. Buy as much as you can right now. You know, he does all the Rapala brand companies. He said that they're already almost out of the basics: line, snap swivels, hooks, rings, split rings, those kind of things. But if you need tackle, buy it now. He thinks they're going to be about out by June, and they're not going to have any for the rest of this calendar year. So what you're seeing in the stores right now, that's it. They're not getting any more. There's no manufacturing being done in China. They can't get it. They can't get anything over here. So buy what you can now, because you're going to be out. If you lose something, it's gone. So that's just a piece of advice. So that's it. I'm going to hang around for a few more minutes if anyone wants to pay dues or anything. Any questions, whatever. Thanks, guys, for coming. Oh yeah, Bruce put it down.
Did you have those sheets?